brought a guest. If you can please introduce your guest, Elaine. Guest.
Anthony Savastano.
Welcome. And Jeannie. Welcome. His wife Carolyn, thank you. Welcome. Nick. Hayase. Welcome.
Thanks for inviting me, and really nice to meet all of you today. Before I start my speech, I'd like to introduce my wife, and she's done enough for me when I came back from Vietnam 50 years ago, and I'd like to kind of recognize her today, so let me introduce her. You don't have to talk, come on. When I came back from Vietnam, 1971, I had a serious case of PTSD, and I was exposed to Agent Orange, and I had a couple of heart surgeries and stuff like that. But anyway, when I came back, I kind of forced her to marry me, but she said that was the biggest mistake she made in her life. It was for about 7-8 years, because she had to nurse me, she had to support me. And every job I had, because I could not focus, I got terminated. And that's how our real estate business called Fruit Motor Realty, we started at $100 a month basement office in Fort Lee. She and I started it, and this way I didn't get terminated. And it's still here. After 48 years, 2 more years is 50 years, but she and I have been married 2 weeks ago, January 30th, for 50 years. I don't know how we did it, because she's from LA, and both of us are, but we came to East Coast. But I chased her back to LA so many times, but she came back to help me. But it's amazing that we're still here, really, because we didn't know each day if we're going to get divorced or separated because of my condition. I couldn't really focus, and I was very frustrated. But anyway, without her today, I might be homeless in Manhattan, and just like other Vietnam vets in Manhattan. But anyway, I wanted to give her credit, and I'd like to recognize her. Thank you. She's kind of shy, so yeah. Today, actually, day after tomorrow, it is the 80th anniversary of Executive Order 9066. This was signed by President Roosevelt in 1942. This was when Japanese Americans in West Coast, California, Oregon, Washington, and parts of Arizona were interned without due process. And I'll get into it a little bit later on. And I do have an apology letter from President Clinton, and I'll read the Civil Liberties Act of 1988, but this was due to prejudice. But I'll get into that. But I'm not resentful or anything. And during that time, I brought a flag, banners for the Japanese American whose families were locked up for close to 4 years, yet the Japanese American soldiers volunteered and had become the most decorated unit in the entire history of the United States Army. And I brought a couple banners today to really celebrate them, because they were really our symbol that they really helped us along until 1978, when Aiko Herzog discovered the fabricated report of what was, that was sent to the Supreme Court, so that we were interned. But I'll get into that a little bit later. That's going to be my main story. I brought some artifacts or some sources rather than those 3 chairs over there. One of them has 110 years of our family's history from 1911 to now, and that includes internment camp that our family was locked up for 4 years, and I was actually born in one of the camps. And also, one of my friends served in Vietnam. He was a special forces, and I was near Cambodian border, a place called Duc Quay. Duc Quay, Duc Hoa, Cu Chi, and Tran Bang. They were the 4 districts that was in the art district of Hang Nia. I don't know if you remember the little girl in New York Times magazine running because the napalm was dropped on her. I think she currently lives in Boston. She must be in her 70s, or 60s. But that's where I was. Cu Chi, as you know, is known for tunnels, 110 miles of tunnels. That's probably why I got my PTSD, because I had to, be careful. Near the tunnels, there were a lot of booby traps. And whenever there's booby traps, and they would never come out during the daytime, they'll come out nighttime. Somebody would step on a booby trap. And somebody stepped on a booby trap, we had to call the medevac. And then they would start shooting mortar at us. So this continued on, and boy, that was pretty hairy. But any war, as you know, and I don't know if there are any veterans, but any war is really, it's very cruel, to say the least. Napalm, I'm exposed to Agent Orange because they have to defoliate a lot of jungles in Vietnam, and many of us Vietnam vets, we have defoliants, and I had 2 heart surgeries because of that. And I don't know, I recently fractured 9 vertebrae in my lower back. Right now, my osteoporosis specialist is checking to see my bone marrow if this has anything to do with Agent Orange. But like if your family and somebody comes and beats your family up, wouldn't you protect them? You don't want to go hide in a closet. You don't want to run away. And all of us are here to protect our country. That's what we did. Many of us, I would say a good 90% of us did that. And I would like to show the banners, the most decorated unit in the entire history of the United States. I brought, because I'm going to be using this, we have in the Japan parade in May 14th at Central Park, and I'll be hitting all the veterans, the Japanese Americans, and I'll be holding that flag. That is the symbol of 447. And President Truman said to these soldiers, you not only fought prejudice, you not only fought the war, but you had fought the prejudice and won the war. And all us Japanese Americans are very proud of it. This is the logo for the 442nd Regimental Unit. And there was a 100 battalion logo also, but I think this is sufficient to show, I think I made a point that they were our heroes. Thank you. So I'll get into the meat of the story. What is the Executive Order 9066? In February 19 of 1942, President Roosevelt signed Executive Order 9066, interning all the Japanese American in West Coast, like I mentioned, California, Oregon, Washington, parts of Arizona. They only give us 10 days notice. And each of us had one carry-on suitcase. And the first place that my family went in 1942 was Santa Anita Racetrack in Los Angeles, because my family had lived in Royal Heights or East LA. So that was the closest part where they could put many Japanese Americans until 10 other camps were being built in the remote areas of the United States. And 6 months later, they had moved to Arkansas. So that was the furthest east the camp was built. And they left from Union Station in Los Angeles with shades down because they want to have do this inconspicuously so no one would notice. And they had to, stay in Arkansas. At that time in Arkansas, they had a very unfair loyalty question, and they asked anybody over 17 years old, would you defend this country and serve in the United States Army? Well, 90% of people said yes, but my father has said no because he had 4 of my older sisters and I was about to be born. He said, and you took all my business and you interned us here, how, I cannot do. So he answered no. But most the Japanese American answered yes. I guess they didn't want to rock the boat. Another very unfair question was, would you disavow the Emperor of Japan? At that time, my grandparents, my mother's side and my father's side, lived in Hiroshima, Japan. So they said, no, I will not disavow Emperor of Japan. So we were put in a special camp called Turtle Lake, and that's where I was born. And I have the book from Turtle Lake back there. When you have a chance, you could take a look what the camp looks like and so forth. And that's where I was born. Anyway, so we had spent the rest of the years until the end of the war, until December of 1945. And because of our grandparents who lived in Hiroshima, Japan, my father took all of us back to Hiroshima. And I had spent about 10 years time over there. And we found a loophole. At that time, my mother's American citizenship was taken away. And my father he came when he was only 13 years old, so he had Japanese citizenship. So he was already alien. But anyway, our parents could not come back to the United States. And us, 5 of us, of course, we were too young to come back. But we did find a loophole when my sister turned 21, 1952. She was able to recall the parents back to the United States. And she and my other sister in 1953 worked hard and recalled my father. And my other sister came in 1955. And my mother, myself, and my other sister had come back in 1956. It took us 4 years to reunite, and when we reunited, it was happiest day of my life. This is our story, and then when we did go back to the United States, we're steered into the area. I lived in South Central Los Angeles. It is today the gang capital of the entire United States, and we were not able to move into nice areas. At that time, the the exclusion with the Japanese was so tough. I know my father, in 1921, he went to segregated school in Sacramento, California, a place called Florence. I didn't know the Japanese Americans went to segregated school, just like the blacks in the South, but I found out later on that Japanese Americans in that area was segregated. But all these things existed. However, my father never lost the faith in the United States. When he was here, he only had 8th grade education. He attended segregated school, but he was able to find a partner and started a place called Oka Produce. They handle tomatoes and lettuce, and he was very successful. But he lost everything when the war broke out. And then we went to the camp, and then when we went back to Hiroshima, he lost everything again. And when we all came back, he had nothing. At that time, he was 50 years old, but he never lost focus on the United States. He said, if you work hard, you know you're going to get there. Even though, he lost everything, he had this focus. He had American dream in his mind, And all of us siblings, we did well. One of my sisters became a doctor. One of them became a high school teacher. Myself and my wife, we started Full Mobility, which we still exist. So we did well. But this country, it does give you opportunity. I just wanted to kind of give a story about us, because in 2 days, the Executive Order 9066, which was signed in 1942, is going to take place. And whenever I have opportunity, like today, and I want to thank Jean for giving me opportunity to talk about it. I had spoken at Hunter's College, Community College LaGuardia, which they put this in the archives. I spoke at CUNY and different organizations, and I want everybody to know the fact that we don't have a resentment. We don't want this to happen to any other American. Back 5 years ago, in fact, Muslim Americans were involved, and they were treated just like us Japanese Americans. And I didn't want that to happen. So this is where I started my active, crusade against this. So I'm still fighting this for the sake of America. It is a great country. I'll serve this country again if I have to, because it is a great country. And you don't know until you go to other countries. Then you'll find out what a great country it is. And I would like to start from the grassroots level and let everybody know that we got to stand together. The diversity is here, but this is one of the few countries leading the entire world in fighting for diversity. It's not easy, you know it. However, all of us work hard together. We could still rebuild our country. Thank you very much. And I would like to take questions if you have it. If I could answer, I'm not a historian. My family had experienced the internment camp. I myself was born and I grew up in Hiroshima until I was 11 and a half. I grew up in South Central, went to college. I volunteered in the United States Army. I went to Officer Candidate School and I served in Vietnam. But when I came back, thanks to my wife, I'm still here. But I'm not a historian, but I'll do my best to answer as much as possible. Based on my experience, I'll try to have a dialogue with you. If you have any questions, please ask me. Yes.
You talked about the states in the Midwest and in the West.
Yes.
But what about here in the East? Do these people have to go to
Well, I belong to Japanese American Association in New York City. There's a lady named, I forgot her name. But she's 85, I believe. And she told me there was no camp over here. But she said every time she had to leave 5 miles away from their home, they had to call FBI so that, they would know where they are. So they were really controlled at that time too, Japanese American. But about 95% of us had been interned at that time. 5%, some in Chicago, some in East Coast left here, and some places in Utah, there were Japanese Americans there too. They were not interned. But I'm sure they had a hard time. And also, I believe that other Asians probably had a hard time because they look at us. And this was, if you talk about a hate crime, this was hate crime of the century. And then there was another hate crime that I experienced back in the late 80s and early 1990s when Japanese had bought New York City, bought America. Like they bought Rockefeller Center, for example. They bought Pebble Beach, and of course the mass media, wrote this up. And in fact, there was a certain amount of jealousy. In fact, that was an Oprah Winfrey show because of this. Talk about the hate crime. In fact, the Chinese American in Detroit actually has was, beaten up by a bat. He got killed because he looked like Japanese. So that was 7th time this hate crime that happened. And the current hate crime, because again, political leadership, and somebody says something, people believe it. I think we should, have to legislate. You have to go to the top and do something about it, so that something like this does not happen. But that was a good question. Now let me get hate crime. Thanks. Yes. Go ahead.
More of a comment than a question. And coincidentally,
Huh?
not more than 3 weeks ago, I had a conversation with two of my friends, my age, well educated. I was talking about the intern camps, and they had no knowledge of it at all.
Yes.
So I appreciate you coming out.
Yeah.
And
My
not
wife
everyone's
and
aware of it.
yeah. My wife and I attended school in Los Angeles, and I remember reading a book in junior high school in 8th grade, and I was looking for an internment camp, and this is Japanese American, but intern, there was one sentence at that time, and I don't think they really had this in our books until probably recently. I'm not quite sure when, but I think something like this has to be told, not being resentful, but it has to be told. So any other American, doesn't matter what nationality or race, doesn't happen to them. Because this is our country, we gotta take it back. Yes.
I think it's important that you put this into history. I know you're doing that, but if you don't let people know about this 100 years from now, if you don't study history, you're going to lose a terrible chapter, which is why there's only one sentence.
Yeah. But I like to talk to young people, and again, a lot of young people, they don't know about it, and they were kind of shocked. In fact, I went to George Washington High School. I think 8th grade finally got history on the Japanese internment camp, and I gave a lecture through Zoom, and in fact, they're like me. When I was their age, I grew up in South Central, so I told them, we're very similar in a way, but they were kind of shocked. But actually, they don't. He said that the history teacher said these kids don't ask questions, but boy, they're asking a lot of questions today. So I was very happy to hear that. Yes.
Not a question, but more of a statement. I would like to commend you for not only your courage back then, but to continue to have the courage today, and for all that you do. And I would like to say thank you for believing in the United States.
Well, thank you. Like statement like that from you gives me a lot of courage to continue talking, and also all of us do like this country. This is a great country. We gotta make it a country, So I enjoy doing it because I lived the American dream because of my father, who lost everything, but he realized the American dream that it was taken away from him. Well, thank you for your statement.